Hello, my name is Louise Townsend and this is my evaluation for my FMP of Year 1, Project 4. Did you meet the agreed requirements and parameters for the performance as you stated in Task 1? In my Task 1, I said, a small, close, personal event. We want it to be intimate, personalised, celebratory and verbatim. We saw it as an event to be able to send the second years off to say good luck for their future plans. I would say that we definitely met this aim. We had a small audience group of around 30 people. We included a glass of Prosecco and a cupcake in the ticket price, which the audience received upon arrival. The first scene of the show included the first years singing a song which we have sang all throughout the year, except Tash changed the lyrics slightly to be more personal to us. Meanwhile, the second year spoke about their future plans after leaving college. We conducted verbatim interviews which allowed us to create the content for the show. We each interviewed either our parents or teachers and each other. However, I did say that I was going to film myself watching the videos of the verbatim interviews, but I didn't get a chance to do so as I didn't have anything to film on as I had to watch the videos on my phone. Evaluate how well we met the style of production and the techniques used within it. We decided that the style of the productions should be verbatim, or at least part verbatim, as we didn't get much content from the videos, and sometimes to make things make sense you have to add in a couple words or sentences. We wanted it to be a close, personal and intimate event, and to be very sentimental, especially to the second years, as we saw it as a way of saying goodbye to them. We had second year boards where we posted photos and pictures of the second years and some of their future goals and their best memories of being at college. At the front of house, when the audience arrived, they were able to look at them. We decided that we should have cake and Prosecco available for the audience upon arrival. We felt like this made it more of a celebratory event, which we liked. We had pictures hung up from the ceiling and from festoons at the front of house for the audience to look at as they were walking through. At the end of the show, we did a balloon release to which I organised, and Lottie, the course captain, and Lydia gave a speech. To keep the performance as verbatim as possible, I used Stanislavski's naturalism techniques of what if when creating the character profiles. We also ensured to watch the videos back over the verbatim interviews multiple times to try and capture the essence of the characters that we were playing. Evaluate how we met the needs of the audience. We ensured that the route was fully accessible for anyone that could possibly have a disability or be less able than other audience members. For example, we wanted to walk down to the bottom of the hill. Having done this would have been difficult for somebody who was, say, for example, in a wheelchair, as the hill is grass. So we decided to lead them down a path instead. Personally, I feel that the ticket cost was a little bit expensive, it being £10 a ticket. However, the audience did get a Prosecco and cupcake, so I do understand why the ticket prices were so expensive. We got the audience to view a film in the show, so we sat out seats and beanbags for any audience members who may have wanted to sit down. I would say that we met the hopes for the show being comedic, as there were some moments in there where it was really funny and I felt like it was a close personal event as aimed that we wanted for the audience. We also had it as abstract, so it was open to interpretation of each individual audience member. Evaluate the use of vocals within the performance. Personally, I didn't participate in much singing in the performance. However, I did in the song at the end, which is a version of the Hanging Tree, which Tash wrote to make it closer and more personal to us. We had Jasmine, who sang her song that she wrote about the course and the experiences that we've had, and Tash, who sang her song as it led the audience down to the bottom of the tree. There were some parts in the show where we had things recorded. For example, Jasmine pre-recorded the intro for the show. I researched about how to manipulate my voice to make it sound deeper as I was playing Holly, who does naturally have a fairly deep voice, and my dad, who obviously has a deep voice. The warm-up leaders ensured to include vocal warm-ups before we participated in any sort of singing or performance. Evaluate the use of physicality within the performance. Compared to our last show of the musical that we did as part of the National Theatre Connections project, we didn't have much physicality or movement in the show. However, we did have mannerism sequences where we watched the videos of the verbatim interviews and picked up on some of the mannerisms of the people who we were interviewing. We each came up with a sequence of about 8 counts, and then we picked our favourites. The people we picked were Tash, Lottie, Jazz and Meg. However, we decided to go for Tash and Lottie for the performance as they were second years. Within the performance, we used something from the Connections musical in the doorframe with Holly and Meg. There was a video uploaded onto my site, and I played my dad as my mate Dave, the DJ, and picked up on his mannerisms of when he's mixing his songs together and some of the movements and mannerisms that he uses with his arms and legs, and the things like kind of bouncing all over the place. So I picked up on these small movements and over-exaggerated them. Evaluate the use of characterisation within the performance. Within the performance, I played my dad and Holly. Everybody in the performance portrayed their characters well, and you could tell who they were supposed to be playing at each part. However, I do feel like with a little bit more time and more rehearsal, I could have been a little bit more like my dad and Holly. I feel like I could have picked up more on some of Holly's mannerisms and some of the more things that she says. I feel like I had a really good concept as my dad as I watched the videos over and over. I kind of just sat there and watched him some nights when he was doing his mixing shows. I do personally feel like there was more that some people could have done to be more like their characters. For example, Phoebe playing my mum, there was a few mannerisms and things that she didn't quite pick up on. However, this could just be because I'm so close to my mum that I pick up on things like this. Evaluate your ability to connect with your intended audience. I feel like there were some moments in the show where we could have tried to make the performance make more sense to the audience. I feel like some parts of it were quite difficult for them to understand. I feel like, especially for my parents, seeing me play them, they found that quite funny and they connected to it quite well. However, there might have been, in some parts and with other audience members, they might not have quite understood it. For example, when I was playing my dad and I said, "Oh mate, you're shit," some audience members might take that in a different way in the context it was meant. I feel like the ending of the show, All Down by the Tree, we all connected to the audience quite well because we were explaining about how we felt about the second years leaving and about how they felt and some of our memories in college. And then we had photos of us hung up on the tree so they could see them and they could see all the connections that we had with each other. Evaluate the effectiveness of lighting within the performance. Due to the short amount of time that we had to put the show together, we didn't quite think about the tech plans until quite at the last minute. We had enough time, we had enough lighting for what we needed. However, it was quite difficult, especially when lighting the studio, and trying to light all of the different sections, and knowing the cues and who was pushing what light on and off. We had difficulty lighting the corridor for the audience. I feel like it could have been lit up a little bit better. However, we didn't want to have the main lights on as we felt it took away the intimacy of the show. Evaluate the effectiveness of sound within the performance. When it comes to sound, I feel like we made the most of the resources that we had. Most of our speakers were quite rubbish. They were quite quiet. I had difficulty in the rehearsal as when I ran out to go do the fitness scene, the speaker disconnected from my phone. I think because of the distance, we figured out that I used a different speaker in the last bit and kept both the speakers and the phone with me. However, this was still something that we probably should have thought about beforehand. We wanted to have a soundscape, however, we just didn't have the time to pull all of that together. Evaluate the effectiveness of your production meetings throughout the process. As a stage manager, I was in charge of leading the productions meeting. However, due to the lack of time that we had and how busy we were during the creative process, we kind of lost track of the production meetings, and I was just kind of having informal conversations with members of the cast to discuss how it went and how far along they were. For example, Holly and Lois didn't quite get the warm-up line complete on the deadline that I set them, so I set them a new deadline that they made. It's the same for Lucas when it comes to the poster. He was about a week late, so we just set a new deadline and he got it done by then. Evaluate the success of the set within the performance. I feel like the set in the baby advice could have been a little bit better. We don't have very many resources available to us to make it look very homely due to the studio that we was in. The ceiling is quite high and the walls are black. It's quite difficult to make it look homely. Myself and Lucas was quite stuck on what to do for the set of my mate Dave and his part of Mandy. I feel like they could have been improved a little bit if we had spent a little bit more time thinking about it and thinking about the space that we had. I really liked the ideas that we had for the tree with the photos and the fairy lights. I think it really looked really aesthetically pleasing to end the show there. Evaluate the effectiveness of costume, hair and makeup within the performance. I feel like there was room for improvement when it comes to the makeup and the hair for the show. Not many actors did any makeup. Myself, I just had a very natural look, similar to what I do every day. I feel like we could have had more unison between actors, especially when it comes to hair and costume. I feel like when it comes to the ideas that we had for costume, we decided to go for all blacks with black shoes and one item of clothing that the person that we were playing would wear. So for example, for Holly I would have a zip-up green jacket. We always make a joke that Holly's quite chavvy, so we felt like it fitted her character quite well. And then I gave a scarf to Phoebe because everyone always seems to think that I wear scarves a lot. We had an idea for us to wear blue jeans and a white top, or blue jeans and a black top. However, we found this difficult with the short amount of time that we had and with a small budget. We couldn't buy any clothing for everybody and not everybody had blue or black jeans. Evaluate the effectiveness of props within the performance. Not many props are used in the performance until the song at the end that Jazz wrote, and we each had certain props that we used within the show. I feel like that some of the props that we had used with Matthew and Lucas could have been better, and for example the faces and the apron that they use. I feel like at certain points it could look a little bit tacky. I feel like there could have been more improvement with a bigger budget and more time. I made a plan on the day of the show to use my computer in the baby advice scene to make it look like I was still mixing songs together. However, I ended up forgetting in the performance. Evaluate the potential of the piece with a larger budget. What ideas do you have? I feel like with a large budget we would have been able to have better props and better costume. However, personally I feel like it wasn't a larger budget that we needed, it was more time and more ideas and more structure for the show in general. Thank you for listening.